A very good afternoon to you, to whichever part of the globe that you belong to. Great. So we will be continuing our session on organizational behavior. In the first session of organizational behavior, what we tried to do was we tried to define what is the organization, what is the behavior. We also tried to found out what is the importance of why we need to learn organizational behavior in the current context. We have also tried to understood how the role of personnel department, HR department, and how OB becomes a part of HR function very much. We have seen also the role of a manager, the various roles that he undertakes of planning, of delegation, of executing, of feedback, and how these three things are intertwined and interlooped between each other. We have also tried to understand what are the 2-3 layers on which the organizational behavior is dependent. We said that it is a behavior of an individual first, and then it becomes a behavior of an organization, wherein it becomes a culture. So we get the 3 layers. One, individual, because organizations are made up of people, you and me. So one is the people, the individual level. When the organization form groups, they form teams. That is a group level of dynamics, where we had discussed last time how individual in a group, the behavior changes, whereas at the individual level, he has a different kind of behavior. In a group, it's different. And the third is the organizational level of behavior, where we have tried to understand that when the behavior of the teams are put together, they form the group dynamics or the company dynamics or the organizational dynamics. So a quick recap: on one side we have an individual behavior, then we have a group behavior, and then we have an organization behavior. And what is an organizational behavior? Organizational behavior actually forms the culture of the company. People who are working, students, if you are working for an organization, you will realize that the culture is so very important. And what is culture? The behavior of the group of its people. So there are 3 layers in which we will be studying organizational behavior: individual level, group level, and the organizational level. We have also seen in the last session that at individual level they have broken up into personalities, values, emotions, feelings, decision making, so on and so forth. In group, we have seen about power and politics, how do we behave in a group, about emotional understanding. And in a culture, we saw about leadership, it's about being visionary, stuff like that. So we will roll out or unfold our session by the starting stage, that is about individual behavior. And there are various aspects. Almost 2 or 3 sessions will be devoting our time on individual behaviors and what are the implications it has from an organizational dynamics point of view. So one of the first features that we'll be discussing today in this session, we'll be discussing 3 features at the individual front. One is the attitudes and job satisfaction. 2, we'll be discussing on values and personalities. And 3, we'll be discussing on perceptions and decision making. And all these 3 come under the first bracket of individual behavior. Friends, we need to understand at which level we are addressing. We are discussing at level 1, that's about individual behaviors, and in that the first we'll be discussing on attitudes and job satisfaction. So let's see, look into what are we going to deal with it. So in this section of attitude and job satisfaction, we would be addressing these areas. After studying this, you will be able to understand, contrast the three components of an attitude. So we will kind of bifurcate or divide and understand attitude and its sub-elements as well. We will summarize the relationship between attitudes and behavior. One question, students, you should always understand and ask yourself also is there a relationship between a behavior? Behavior means how does he act, how a person behaves or acts in front of people. Is there a relationship between behavior and attitude? So that's also something that we will find in the relationship. We'll compare the contrast, the major job attitudes. We will look into what are the primary attitudes that we are going to deal with in different contexts. We are also going to define job satisfaction and show how it can be measured. In today's context, it is very much defined that any individual, if he or she needs to grow or prosper within any organization, job satisfaction is very important, because if you are not satisfied with your current job or any job that you are doing, excellence will never come. That's the underlying philosophy. Friends, it's very clear. As HR managers or OB managers, it's very important that when we speak about employee engagement, we dealing with people, interacting with people, having various levels of interventions at different point of time, it is very important to look into these aspects about job satisfaction. Because if an employee is not satisfied about his job, really it's a tough ask, because the kind and quality of work he would do would not be great. So we'll look into how it can be measured as well. What are the tools available as well? Summarize the main causes of job satisfaction. We'll also try to put in what are the various points through which job satisfaction could be achieved or done. Identify 4 employee responses to the satisfaction. We'll also find out what are the parameters on which employees get dissatisfied, or when do employees get dissatisfied, and show whether job satisfaction is a relevant concept in across the country, is what we will be dealing with in the coming half an hour or so. Okay, let's proceed. Number 1, when we speak of attitude, it is an evaluative statement or judgment concerning objects, people and events. They say that it is very difficult to understand and interpret attitude. Now, how do we define attitude? Attitude is the way people think. Attitude is the way they behave. Attitude is the way they speak. Attitude is the way they represent things, objects, and give meaning to things. So when we say attitude, they are made up of 3 component elements. Important to understand this. So whenever we say his attitude is good, bad, so what are we actually finding out? Attitude is made up of primarily 3 components or elements, and those are: number 1, cognitive. It is a cognitive. Attitude is first one of the elements. It has a cognitive function. Cognitive means it is the way you think. So when we speak of cognitive function, it is the opinion or belief segment of an attitude. So any attitude, whenever we are speaking, comes from a thought. That means a person need to have a thought in the background. So that's where the cognitive element comes from. The second element in attitude is the affective element. Now affective element comes from affection or the feeling part. If you see the emotional or feeling of an attitude. So when we speak of attitude, we also see that certain people behave differently based on how they feel. So they say when we say of cognitive, it is about thinking. When you say affective, it's about feeling. And the third element is the behavioral element. That means an intention to behave in a certain way towards someone or something. For example, I'll give an example to substantiate what I am saying. Suppose if for a person difficulty comes up, any kind of difficulty. Say for example, uh, a misfortune happens. Misfortune means something that is not expected. A loss comes in a person's life. A loss could be an emotional loss, a financial loss, any kind of loss. Now, based on the attitude the person has, he behaves differently. For example, one way, if a person suffers loss, people can respond by thinking that, oh, come on, why this has to happen to me? Or, oh God, why me? Why I am facing all this? This is one way to think or to speak. But we also find some other set of people who represent it differently. That means if a misfortune or if some loss happens to them, they will take it up as a challenge. They will say, okay, come on. If this has happened, okay, what learning do I get? How do I come back? How do I demonstrate great skills? What do I learn from it? So these are different representations, and that is so very important. Now, some people, when they fall down, they don't get up. And they don't get up only for some time, but they don't get up for a long period of time. So if they don't get up for a long period of time, both their effectiveness and efficiency is lost. And isn't that important from a personal context, from an organizational context? It is. But some people, when losses happen, when they fall down, they kind of get up. They have strong belief system about themselves. They are confident in their approach, and they kind of storm in. They kind of, okay, come on, I'm ready for it. Now, it is so very important, students, to understand that the attitude, they say that there's a lot of phrase about it. It says that your attitude defines your altitude. I repeat, your attitude defines your altitude. Altitude means the height, means what kind of inner representation you have about your thinking, your feeling, and your behaving defines how much you're going to achieve in life. So three elements of attitude, those are cognitive element, affective element, and behavioral element. Great. Now, the point is, does behavior always follows from attitudes? Means the question is, whatever behavior that you are demonstrating, is it coming from an attitude? Now, Leon Festinger, a renowned psychologist, says, no, the reverse is sometimes true. I mean, he says that both attitude and behavior are overlapped and they're interdependent from each other. That means sometimes you change your behavior also to change your attitude. So, and it is reverse as well. So that comes to an important point of cognitive dissonance. Now, what is cognitive? Cognitive is a thinking pattern. Dissonance is conflict. Now, our thinking pattern might be in a conflict. Any incompatibility between two or more attitudes, between behavior and attitudes. Now, there can be a lot of time. For example, if I am to tell you that a lot of time it so happens in our personal life or in organizational life as well, a lot of time it happens that heart says one thing, the head says something else. Now, this is a cognitive distortion. Putting it from a context of organizational perspective, for a lot of people, they felt always like taking up a career something else at some point of time. They always wanted to do something else, and yet at this point of time, they are doing something else. Now, don't you find people of this kind? Now, this is a classical cognitive dissonance, means there is a conflict happening between the head and the heart. There is an internal conflict. This is called as cognitive dissonance. Now, these conflicts, individuals seek to reduce this uncomfortable gap or dissonance to reach stability and consistency. A lot of time, people are not able to deal with it, and they get stuck up in situations for a long period of time. And if you are not going to address cognitive dissonance, it's a tough going. Consistency is achieved. When we say that stability, people try to reach this gap or bridge this gap. Consistency is achieved by changing the attitudes, by modifying behavior or through rationalization or logic. Desire to reduce dissonance depends on, if you want to change this conflict, it depends on the important elements, degree of individual influence, and rewards involved in dissonance. Now, suppose the example that we took, that I am doing a certain job which basically I am not liking at this point of time because I always wanted to become something else. Now, this is a classical individual dissonance. Now, if this is a dissonance, the person needs to clarify, okay, gone is gone. But whatever I am doing, and still could do justice with it. They say that you should always do what you love. Heard about this? It is said you should always do what you love, or else you can start loving whatever you are doing. Now, students, it's so very important to understand this, that for all, not necessarily that everybody would get an opportunity to do whatever they intend to do at one point of time. But having said that, you can always start loving even whatever we are doing by finding its importance, by finding the key contribution that job or particular work or activity is doing to their life. Maybe in terms of resources, maybe in terms of their own development, maybe it's providing support to the family, whatever those. So finding importance about it. Now, it is so very important, students, to understand that living with cognitive dissonance or conflict is not going to help anyway. This has to put to rest, or this has to be bridged across by finding a logic, by changing the meaning that you're giving. So this cognitive dissonance is also something that people have to address, because suppose if this cognitive dissonance prevails with an individual level working for an organization, imagine the kind of results they will produce. Now, these results might really not help the company to grow and prosper. Great. Other variables involved, the moderate variables. The most powerful moderators of attitude or behavior relationship, if you want to look at the relationship between these two, are importance of the attitude, correspondence to behavior. We look into accessibility as well, existence of social pressures. A lot of time, it is not necessary that people always take up the job that they like. Sometimes social pressure influences. Now, social pressure could be the financial pressure, it could be getting the job pressure, it could be the peer pressure, it could be the parents' pressure, it could be the spouse pressure, the sibling pressure. So this all comes under existence of social pressures and personal and direct experience of attitude as well. So when you're looking at the moderating variables that find existence or relationship between attitude and behavior, these all things influence each other. So if you're saying the moderating variables between the attitude going on to kind of define behavior, these are the moderating variable that goes on to predict the individual behavior. Great. Predicting behavior from attitude. So what kind of behaviors we might expect from a particular kind of attitude? Now, important attitudes have a strong relationship to behavior. They say that our attention goes where our intention is. I repeat, it is said that our attention, wherever we look for also, goes by our intention. That means what kind of drive that we have, what kind of importance that we give to people matters. The closer the match between the attitude and the behavior, the stronger the relationship. In other words, it is saying that the minimal the cognitive dissonance, it is better. Specific attitudes predict specific behavior, and general attitudes predict general behavior. The more frequently expressed an attitude, the better predictor it is. Now, suppose since attitude is composed of thoughts, isn't it? Attitude is a function of few elements that we discussed. It's a cognitive element, it's an affective element, and it's also related to the feeling element as well. So when we say that it is a thought element, so the more often you demonstrate an attitude, the more easy to predict it as well. High social pressures reduce relationship and may cause dissonance. Sometimes people do a job just because of social pressure. It could be a financial pressure, peer pressure, just because they keep on continuing with it. And this might cause a dissonance or a conflict. Now, this in a short term might be okay, but in the long run, as HR managers, as OB managers, as OD managers, organizational development managers, so very important to understand. Now, how this is important from an organizational context? It is important in the sense that if we are interviewing people for a particular kind of job, it is very important to know that the relationship exists in a true term. That means we should find out, does the person wants a job or does a job only to satisfy a particular kind of need, or is he really aspiring to do a job? They say that there is a great difference between should and must. Some people just do because they have to, but the other, they want to, and there's a great difference, and that's an attitudinal difference. When you have to do a job, you will just do a job till how much it is required. That's about it. But when you want to do a job, and wanting to do a job itself is an attitudinal representation. So when you want to do a job, you get different behaviors. You get behaviors like highly focused, highly committed, walking the extra mile, or walking the talk. These all factors or behaviors follow up from the attitude of I want to do the job. On the other hand, if we take the attitude or thought that I have to do a job, if you have to do a job, then the representation or the behavior predictions are: one, I might not be very much excited to go to job. I would be more interested in actual work hours. That means when the job, what are the working hours? I would be always looking at time. When is my job going to finish? Because your motive of doing a job is only a particular reason. It could be monetary. It could be something else. Great. Attitude based on personal experiences are stronger predictors. So application of this now, you might be wondering how this is related from an organizational context. Now, from an organizational behavior perspective, this is also fitted in with when people take interviewings or people are into recruitment. So we need to find out why it is essential for it as well. So these are the predictors from behavior from attitude. Great. We move on. What are the major job attitudes? Now, as discussed earlier, as per the flow, we will be also dealing with what are the major job attitudes. 1. Job satisfaction. 2. Job involvement. 3. Psychological empowerment are the three functions of job attitudes. Now, what is the job satisfaction? Let's slightly get into details, and we will also look into how we are going to measure job satisfaction as well. So, when we are saying job satisfaction, it is a positive feeling about the job. Now, it's so very important that people sometimes when they do their job, they just do it for the sake of doing it. As I was discussing earlier, the difference between want to do a job and have to do a job. So people, when they are satisfied about their job, and which conditions they are satisfied? When they meet with success, when they love their job, or when they want to contribute, when they want to make a difference, when they want name recognition, when they are goal oriented. Great. So it's a job satisfaction is a positive feeling about the job resulting from an evaluation of its characteristics. Now, evaluation could be in terms of results, it could be in terms of appraisals, it could be any of those. The second is job involvement. So we are discussing, I repeat what we are discussing major job attitudes. Now, one is a job satisfaction, and we know how much of job satisfaction is important from a result perspective. Yes or no? Yes. 2 is job involvement. Now, what is job involvement? Job involvement is the degree of psychological identification with the job where perceived performance is important to self-worth. Now, you can only be involved in a particular kind of job when you feel that particular job is contributing to your development, and it is very important to understand these dynamics, the job involvement. And a third aspect of the job attitude is psychological empowerment. Psychological is your psyche, the way you think. Empowerment is giving importance to. Empowerment is something that empowers you, that kind of gives you power. Now, what is psychological empowerment? Psychological empowerment is the belief in the degree of influence over the job, competence, job meaningfulness, and autonomy, where the person feels freedom to do his job, where the person feels high meaning to whatever he was doing, and a degree of influence. That means he feels that I am making a difference. There is my role in that particular job function. That is my contribution. This happened because of me. So that itself kind of empowers people to do their best. So three things that we are looking into major job attitudes. One is job satisfaction, two is job involvement, and three is psychological empowerment. And what we will do is get into further details of these three and see whether we have got few measurement tools as well. Okay, great. So another major job attitude is also organizational commitment. A commitment is some word that people use in any organization. I mean, if you guys are working for any organization or have some kind of work experience, everywhere these days people speak of commitment, because and so very important. I mean, friends, there's a great difference between being interested and being committed. Being interested is something else. We all want to have good things in life, maybe good money, good convenience, good health. But the question is, are you committed? Because being interested is people want so far it's coming easy. It's great. People are interested about it. But the question is, commitment means, are you going to execute that, implement that? Are you going to pay a price for it? Are you going to give sacrifices about something of a leisure time? Are you going to take the pain to achieve? So organizational commitment is something, and we'll try to figure out things that are in that. So when we speak of organizational commitment, it's about identifying about a particular organization and its goals while wishing to maintain membership in the organization. That we are not only aligned with the organizational goals, but we want to be associated with the company. And that is so very important. There are three dimensions, again, we will look into. One is the effective, continual commitment, and normative. Now, three dimensions of commitment are: one, the emotional attachment to organization. I mean, let me tell you, I've seen so many people, they just by looking at the visiting card that they have got, the visiting card of the company, they feel attached. Just seeing the logo, the color, people have a lot of sentiments to it. And people who work for maybe 2-3 generations together, maybe they have it has come to the family itself. So it's about the affective element, the emotional element. The second is the continuous commitment, that is the economic value of staying. That means they know that if I'm going to stay in a particular organization, it is going to give me benefits. Benefits not only in terms of money, but also in terms of facilities, perks. It could be housing, travel, loans, the emotional ego value within the society. Like I'm representing TCS, or I'm representing Reliance, or I'm representing Wipro, or whatever the case might be. So it's about the ego booster that a person gets out of it. Or the normative element, that is a moral or ethical obligation. That means here some people think that if you're working for an organization, you need to be loyal about it. That means there are certain kind of people who don't leave their jobs once they join. They hardly change companies in their lifespan, maybe two, three. Although this ratio has started decreasing in the last 2 decades or so, but you even these days you will find these sort of people. Organizational commitment has some relation to performance, especially for new employees. Now, this level of commitment, even for new employees, matter a lot in terms of the kind and quality of work they exhibit. Because if you have a high level of commitment, you are more focused, you are more targeted and goal oriented, you are more solution oriented than problem oriented, you are ready to walk the extra mile. That means you are ready to satisfy your customers, be it internal or external customer, to have value added services. You are going beyond the call of the duty, as it is more commonly called, going beyond the call of duty. And in today's world, we are living in a time where we are not just looking at customer satisfaction, we are looking at customer delight. So we are looking from a perspective of how we can add value to customers' life. And if you want to always give more than what you receive to your customers, you need to be committed enough. If you are not committed, you will just do your job. That means as per the job definition or job description, which every company does it. But customers relate to those people who have given more, who they relate to those people better. So the point is, when we are looking from an organizational commitment perspective, these all things matter. Less importance now than in the past. Yes, the commitment value, if you see what happened 2 decades, what used to happen 2 decades back, that has slightly diluted into thin air in recent times. Now perhaps more of one occupational commitment, loyalty to profession rather than a given to employer. So they say in these days or the times that we are living in, here loyalty is more to the job function than to an employer. That means 30, 40, 50 years back, loyalty, the definition of loyalty or commitment was related to the employer, whoever is the company. But these days, the loyalty is to the profession, the work that you are doing has become the front seat about it. Great. Yet another more job attitudes are perceived organizational support, POS as it is called. So perceived. Why? It is felt so. It might be actual, it might not be real also. Perceived is something that you only feel that way. Perceived organizational support means for an employee, how does he feel in terms of the support he gets or receives. So it is a degree to which employees believe the organizational values, the contribution care about their well-beingness. Means how much the employee feels that my needs are taken care of by my company. How are needs could be the medical needs, the health needs, the being needs, the ego needs, family needs are taken care of. Higher when rewards are fair, that means end of the day, people want fair treatment. People just don't love biases or prejudices or favorism. Because when people live in an environment where they feel that they are cornered, they are overlooked, especially in terms of promotion. When people feel that somebody else got selected and the basis of selection is not transparent or fair, then people leave the organization very fast. So they say that hire when rewards are fair. The rewards have to be fair. That means they need to be transparent. Employees are involved in decision making. People feel more at home when they feel they are part of the decision making process. Because if they don't feel they are part of the decision making process, they feel they are aloof. They are not part of the system. So the concept of togetherness comes in. The concept of ownership comes in along with it. If they feel they are part of a decision maker. And the supervisors are seen to be supportive. So as many CEOs mention in the interviews that train your people so that they have supreme skills, that they might get a good new job. It is what Richard Branson used to say always, CEO of Virginia Airlines, is train your people so that they become more skilled and they can get a good job, and treat them well so that they don't leave. And he summed it up very clearly. I would like to repeat this quote, and it's so very important. They say that for your employees, train them well through experience or classroom or study so that they're skilled enough and they could get different jobs. But treat them in such a way that they don't leave. And that's what the support is, what we are referring to. Higher POS, that is higher perceived organizational support, is related to higher OCBs and performance. That means that if you have a higher perceived organizational benefit, you will find that the performance of the employee goes many folds over. They say that as an employer or as a policy, if we support the employee in difficult times, I repeat, if you support the employee in difficult times, he gives it back many times over during his organizational tenure. And it's so very important to understand this. That means give him support at the appropriate time. When he's low, when he's down, out, dusted, you will find that if he gains support, he will give that or repay that many times over throughout his tenure. And that's so very important of giving organizational support. Another element of job attitude is the employee engagement. Now, employee engagement is a degree of involvement with satisfaction and enthusiasm for the job. They say that you can teach a person for skills, for knowledge, but you can't teach people to be enthusiastic. Can you? Think about it. Can you teach people to be enthusiastic? The flat answer is no. You can create situations where employee need to find himself engaged, involved, and when you find that happening, and if he's aligned with his goals, missions of life, if he loves the job, then you can find enthusiasm rolling in. Otherwise, you can't teach him to become enthusiastic. Engaged employees are passionate about their work and their company. So if you engage people in whatever they are doing, they become more passionate. So engagement brings along enthusiasm. They're passionate about things. And is passion important for results? It is. Passion gives you and drives you a different kind of energy altogether, isn't it? I mean, you find two different kind of people, one doing the same job, the other doing the same job but with lots of energy, enthusiasm, power, zeal, and lots of flair. And people love to see it. They say enthusiasm is viral. That means if you meet an enthusiastic person, and I'm sure you might have experienced this as well, if you meet an enthusiastic person, you yourself get charged up. There is a natural rub-off effect. We ourselves feel, oh come on, I'm getting charged up about it. So enthusiasm is, being enthusiastic is viral. So two that we have discussed over here is the perceived organizational support and the employee engagement. So the primary attitude that we have looked so far is job satisfaction. We have looked into psychological empowerment. We looked into the job engagement. We have looked into perceived organizational support. Okay. Now, are these job attitudes really distinct? Now, the question that is asked is, we have tried to isolate these attitudes and we have discussed about it. But the question is, are they really separate and distinct? And the answer is a flat no. These attitudes are highly related. That means they are intertwined, intermingled within each other. The variables may be redundant, meaning measuring the same thing under a different name means that we can't really figure out or pinpoint a particular attitude and say that this is it. It cannot be, because they're kind of overlapped with each other. While there is some distinction, there is also a lot of overlap. Great. A job satisfaction. Now, one of the primary job attitude that is measured. So, when we say that if you want to manage well, you need to measure well. They say only that those things could be managed, that can be measured. Because if you can't measure, it is difficult to manage. So, do we have tools to measure these attitudes? So, one of the primary job attitudes measured, broad term involving a complex individual summation of a number of discrete job elements. When we say of job satisfaction, it is not a one single element. It's made up of a small bits and pieces as well. How to measure? Now, there are some global rating, one question, one answer best, or summation score, where we summate it based on the questionnaire. Are people satisfied in their jobs? In the US, yes, but levels appear to be dropping year by year. And results vary by employee facets of the job. That means the kind of job they're dealing with, it varies as well. Pay and promotion are the most problematic elements. Now, students, it's important to understand that if the only reason of doing a job is money, then it's very difficult to hang on and hold on. So whenever we are dealing with people as HR person or as OB managers, we need to highlight what are the other motivators of an individual apart from money as well. That's so very important to understand this. And generally speaking, are people generally satisfied with the kind of job that they're doing? A survey says that not many are really satisfied with the kind of job they're doing. For simple reason that people take up their jobs because of social pressures. Pressures could be monetary, peer, as we discussed. So it's so very important to know the liking, the strengths, what they're good at, their talents. So if an employee joins an organization, he could be brought into for cross-functional exposure based on the kind and quality of work he does becomes important. Great. causes of job satisfaction. We'll also try to figure out what causes job satisfaction. Now, pay influences job satisfaction only to a point. Now, that is the reason a couple of while back I was saying that yes, money motivates, but only to a particular point of time. Money may bring happiness, but not necessarily job satisfaction, because money will give you in terms of the resources that it offers. But in jobs, if you're looking at job satisfaction, then it has to go beyond that. We have to look into other facets or other areas apart from money as well for job satisfaction. Personality can influence job satisfaction, which we will look into personality aspect a couple of minutes later. So negative people are usually not satisfied with the jobs. If people normally have an attitude or a personality type to see the empty glass, that means we have always heard of the example of a half glass, half filled water. So what do you want to see? Some people say half glass full water, or some people say half glass empty water. So it's about the optimist and pessimist, or positive or negative way of looking at things. So if you're looking at only from a negative shade of things in life, they generally are not satisfied, because they always want, okay, because if fault finding mission is the objective, then people tend to sink in in a negative shade much faster. Now, those with positive core self-evaluation are more satisfied with jobs. That means that if people generally figure out ways about finding positivity, or generally are optimistic in the nature of dealing with things, they find out the things very faster. And we will look into these aspects now. Great. So when we say, if you want to plot employee response to dissatisfaction, it could be put in four quadrants. One axis, the x-axis, if you see, have been bifurcated into active and passive, and the y-axis is constructive and destructive. So if you look into this zone, which is a fusion of being active and constructive, we have a voice active and constructive attempt to improve conditions. If you see that which is constructive and passive, they are passively waiting for conditions to improve. They are generally the loyal kind of guys. But if you see the active but a destructive kind of quadrant, you will find exit. That means behavior directed towards leaving the organization, or bad mouthing it, or spoiling, or backbiting it, or saying bad words about people, about the organization. And if you have the destructive and the passive kind of frame, you have the neglect kind of people coming in, where allowing conditions to worsen but don't act about it. So employee responses could be based on the nature and the type of personalities they have. Outcomes of job satisfaction, if you are to ask, job performance. If you see, satisfied workers are more productive, and more productive workers are more satisfied. Generally a thumb rule. It is said that if people are satisfied, the kind of work they do is very productive. That means it's efficient and effective both. And these are interrelated also. That means if you are productive, if you are both effective and efficient, you are satisfied as well. The casualty may run both ways, so they form a loop within itself. Organizational citizenship behaviors. What's that? Satisfaction influences organizational citizenship behavior through perceptions of fairness. A couple of while back, we discussed about how the perceived notions or beliefs and values that the person thinks about the organization, this things develop, that is organizational citizenship behavior develops as well. Then we have a customer satisfaction as well. Now, customer satisfaction in this case could be an internal customer or else could be an external customer as well. So we have a satisfied frontline employees, increased customer satisfaction and loyalty. It's so very important that if you are dealing with a front office, it's so very important that you need to be a satisfied customer yourself. If you yourself are a satisfied customer, then the chance of you satisfying the external customer becomes more. Suppose if you yourself, if you are working, your interface between the company and its external customer, if as an employee he or she is not satisfied himself about the organization, how he can sell his products or services to the customer, isn't it? Think about it. So they said, are you convinced about it yourself? Because if a person is into customer relationship management, CRM, and if an external customer comes along and gives a complaint to maybe its product or services, if you yourself are kind of not satisfied about it, how are you going to deal with the problem, isn't it? It's quite a challenge. So customer satisfaction, absenteeism, and in the long run of time, they say that one of the diagnostic tools or one of the dip test or litmus test to figure this out is absenteeism. That means satisfied employees are moderately less likely to miss work. So if you want to measure job satisfaction, one of the things you can also figure out is absenteeism as a tool about how much the person is satisfied about the job. It's not the only factor, but one of the factors. You need to understand that. Great. More outcomes of job satisfaction. Now we also figure out what are the other benefits or advantages if the customer is satisfied, and those are turnover. That means satisfied employees are less likely to quit. Suppose if you have a satisfied customer already, then the person generally don't quit. His resilience power or the pressure taking ability is more. Many moderating variables are there in this relationship, like economic environment and tenure, organizational actions taken to retain high performers and to weed out low performers as well. The workplace deviance, that means dissatisfied customers are more likely to unionize, that means form unions, abuse substance, steal, tardy and withdraw. Suppose if you are not a satisfied customer, then a lot of complaints will work against you. You yourself want to be a safety umbrella. You will form unions as well. And also, there may be quite a chance or probability to steal, for theft as well. Despite the overwhelming evidence of the impact of job satisfaction on the bottom line, most managers are either unconcerned or overestimate work satisfaction. It's so very important for HR managers and people managers. You don't necessarily have to be in the HR function, but if you are relating with your people, if you are having teams to manage, it is important to understand that job satisfaction is important. And How can you figure out if the person is not satisfied? Check his absenteeism records, check his engagement level, check his commitment level, check his punctuality level of working office login time and log off time. Things like this says about his involvement. Great. Global implications of job satisfaction. Is job satisfaction a US concept or a Western concept? No, but most of the research on job satisfaction has been done over there, but it is a concept of in every organization. Are employees in Western cultures more satisfied with their jobs? A very global question. Now, they appear to be more satisfied, but not necessarily be. That depends on, this is a very contextual question, but can be dealt with as well. So, at every country level as well, because of the cultural frames that people have, their satisfaction levels differs as well. Great. So we'll just summarize in the first part of the session that we are trying to address. One, we are addressing the summary. Manager should watch employees' attitude. What do we take home from this 40-45 minutes of our talk is, one, manager should watch out the attitude, like they give warnings to potential problems, they influence behavior as well. Managers should try to increase job satisfaction and generate positive job attitude. Reduce cost by reducing turnover, absenteeism, tardiness, theft and increasing OCB. Focus on the intrinsic part of the job. That means that make work challenging and interesting. They say that one of the things that people love in a job, apart from money, is, are they learning something from the job? Are they growing? If we want to make two axes from challenge and performance axis, on x-axis we take performance and y-axis we take challenge. If a person is given a task where the job is not much challenging, his performance will be there initially. But if it is not enough challenging, his performance will kind of plateau down, and at some point later it will start falling off as well. So, as a manager, it is so very important to understand and tell that he or she needs to find out how a job we can make it more challenging, more interesting, so that the individual grows at a personal level and addresses them better as well. Great. So this is what we have done or try to understand in the subject of attitude, its components. We have looked into what are the major job attitudes. It could be job satisfaction, engagement, psychological empowerment, commitment, job commitment, and we have tried to address what are the implications as well. Great. In the coming around 20 minutes or so, we would be addressing on personality and values. Understand that broadly, let me again reiterate or debrief you that we are studying organizational behavior under three heads: individual level, group level, organizational level. At each level, the behaviors are different. As of now, in the coming two sessions today, and another two sessions will be dealing with individual level of behaviors. In that first part, we took as attitude. Second, we'll be looking into personality. And understand, students, that each of these are interlinked. Although we are studying separately, they're kind of intertwined with each other. They are kind of overlapped with each other. Great. So personality and values. So let's first understand what are we going to find out in this coming 20 minutes or so. So we'll define personality, describe how it is measured, and explain the factors that determine an individual personality. We're going to describe the major, it's called as MBTI or Myers-Briggs Type 1 personality framework and assess its strength and weakness. So this is a psychometric tool that's globally is used with various organizations to identify or to understand various type of personalities better, identify the key traits of the Big Five personality model, demonstrate how the Big Five traits predict behavior at work, identify other personality traits relevant to OB, define values as well. So in this coming 20 minutes or so, we'll also try to understand what are values, demonstrate their importance, and contrast terminal and instrumental values. So what are the end values and what are the process values? Compare generalization differences in values, and we also look into identify few basic models of values as well. Great. So what is the personality? So we'll first start with what is the personality, and we'll also take it up from a perspective of an organizational context. Great. So what is personality? It is a dynamic organization within the individual of those psychophysical systems that determine his unique adjustment to its environment. That means the sum of total of ways in which an individual reacts and interacts with others that measurable traits of a person exhibits. That means in simpler definition, a personality means how is a person going to relate with the other person in an organizational context. And how do we measure personality? Helpful in hiring decisions. Now, if we see into personality traits, so in recruitment process there are a lot of psychometric tools to screen out candidates. Most common methods being self-reporting surveys or observer rating surveys provide an independent assessment of personality. Often better predictors as well are there. Great. So when we say of personality determinants, those are one, hereditary. That means certain things that comes through our genes, through our family, through our lineage. That means factors determined at conception. It could be the physical personality. So personality, when we are speaking of, it is of the physical dimension about it, and the second is an internal dimension about it. So physical dimension, obviously the face, the structure, the color, the height, weight as well. This hereditary approach argues that genes are source of personality. Twin studies raised apart from very similar personalities. Parents don't add much to personality development, and there are some personality change over a long period of time. So one is a hereditary approach where we have seen that people are groomed up in a certain way. That means they say that if I am to put in simple language, one of the most debatable point that when we speak of personality is the nature and the nurture rule. So nature is what we are born with. Now, born with in terms of physical attributes or mental attributes. Nurture is the grooming element. Now, grooming could be the parent grooming, the environment grooming, the peer grooming, the educational grooming, the social grooming, the cultural grooming, those grooming. So, hereditary looks into the nature element, what you are given with. Great. Enduring characteristics that describe an individual behavior. They said the more consistent the characteristic and the more frequently it occurs in diverse situations, the more important the trait. They say that if certain traits or behaviors are repetitive, that means it's a part of your pattern. To Two dominant frameworks used to describe personality are, which will look into some aspects of MBTI and the Big Five model. So we'll look into this one by one. So when we say of MBTI, or the Myers-Briggs type indicator to define personality, it's a more widely used instrument in the world, MBTI. Participants are classified on 4 axes to determine one of the 16 possible personality types. So there are 4 aspects that we'll discuss, 4 aspects of an individual. With these 4 possible permutation and combination, we have 16 variants, and we have 16 personality types as well. They are ENTJ, and those are E standing for extrovert versus introvert, S standing for sensing or intuitive, S or N here is intuitive, thinking or feeling, judging versus perceiving. So they are kind of polar opposite, either extrovert, introvert, sensing versus intuitive, thinking versus feeling, or judging versus perceiving. So with all these 4 combinations, we have 16 different types of personality types. So each of these 16 possible combinations has a name. For instance, for example, visionaries. Now visionary, is it a personality type? Yes. They have this combination of INTJ, means they are intuitive, they are cognitive, they are thinkers, and also they are judges, J for judges. So they are original, stubborn, and they are driven. Visionaries are driven for their goals. Organizers, they have a combination of ESTJ, they are realistic, logical, analytical, and business-like. Conceptualizers are entrepreneurial, innovative, individualistic, and resourceful. Now the point is, what do we get from this is the point. The point is, if we can identify people in this category or personality types, then we can delegate and assign roles based on this. So because these are the areas that they are good at, and if we can give the task based on this, then they tend to do well. Research results on validity mix, that means MBTI is a good tool for self-awareness and counseling and should be used as a selection test for job candidates, and a lot of organizations use this for recruitment and also for raising self-awareness in training programs as well. Let's do the other model. It's the Big Five model of personality dimension. Here we look into extroversion. That means social, gregarious, and assertive. Agreeableness. Consciousness is a responsible, dependable, persistent, and organized. Emotional stability. Openness to experience. So these are the 5 variants that the Big Five model of personalities says. It's about extroversion, agreeableness, consciousness, emotional stability, and openness to experience. How do the Big Five triads predict behavior is what we will look into. Here research has shown that this is a better framework. Certain triads have shown to strongly relate to higher job performance. So what we do is we relate these personalities and equate with the performance. So highly conscious person develop more job knowledge because that's his strength. Exert greater effort and have better performance. Other Big Five triads have implications like emotional stability related to job satisfaction. Extroverts tend to be happier in their jobs and have good social skills. Open people are more creative and can be good leaders. Agreeable people are good in social settings. So we never say that this personality type is good or bad. We always say that a particular personality type have their own advantage in a particular setting. And students, we also need to understand that they are not static element. That means every personality is not a static. We keep on evolving. We are dynamic in nature. We human beings are processes, not static. So it's about being ever changing. But these give an inclination to the job type and job delegation as well. The other personality traits that are relevant to organizational behavior are core self-evaluation. So there are tools to raise self-awareness. It could be about SWOT analysis. It could be about intelligence analysis. It could be about Machiavellism as well. The Italian philosopher, scientist, you can call it. It's a pragmatically, emotionally distant power player and who believes that end justifies their means. Here the results are more important than process. High max are manipulative, win more often, and persuade more than they are persuaded, flourish when have direct interaction, work with minimum rules and regulations, and emotion distract others. If these are the criteria, then Machiavellism kind of characteristic really paves the way. The other personality trait is narcissism. Narcissism is an arrogant, entitled, self-important person who needs excessive admiration. And don't you find people of this kind working with any organization? You will definitely find less effective in the job. So these are different personality traits as well. More relevant, self-monitoring. It could be about the ability to adjust behavior to meet external situational factors as well. High monitor confirms more and more likely to become better leaders as well. Then they are risk-taking as well. That means the willingness to take chances. Now in today's environment or leadership, is risk-taking important? Oh, I bet you feel that way. It's so very important. Maybe best to align propensities with the job requirements as well. Risk takers make faster decisions with less information. So when we take of risk taking, it doesn't that we take a blind risk, but we take risks which are appropriate to the context. So these are again personality types, self-monitoring or the risk takers. The type A personality, the more from the 1960s era, we have the type A personality, the aggressive personality type. The people who are driver personality types, they are impatient, they're obsessed with numbers and achievement, they move there, and the proactive personality. Now what are the proactive personality? They identify opportunities, show initiative, take action, and preserves to completion as well, create positive changes in the environment. Few are the types. So when you look into the personality type, just to summarize in the last 10 minutes what we have discussed, we have different personality types as well. The personality types in organizations are normally used through primarily psychometric tools. Those are MBTI, the Myers-Briggs Type 1 indicator, or the Big 5 personality type. There are other variants as well. It could be Machiavellism type, narcissism, self-monitoring type, or the risk-taking type. So based on these categorization of people as well, based on the job tasks that they are doing, we can segregate people accordingly. The second aspect of this is values. Now what are values? Now basic values are basic convictions on how to conduct yourself or how to live your life that is personally or socially preferable, or how to live life properly. Attributes of values or characteristics of values are content attribute. Content attribute is what? That the mode of conduct or the end state is important. So we look into the results are important. Or intensity attribute, or just how important the content is. The value system. Now, a person values rank order by intensity. Now, every individual has different values that he values. For example, the moral values could be respect, humility, forgiveness, trustworthiness, honesty. So these are the moral values. There are other values that people value. It could be hard work, result orientation, or risk taking. They tend to be relatively constant and consistent. Normally, it is said that the values of people don't change over a period of time. They do change, but not many. So, importance of values, if you see, it provides understanding of attitudes, motivation, and behaviors. Values influence our perception of the world around us. A couple of minutes back, I was saying our attention goes based on intention is. That means whatever things we value, we tend to kind of look into those aspects very fast and very well as well. Now, if you want to represent interpretations of right and wrong, now based on the individual value system, people tend to segregate, okay, this I should do, this I would not do at all. So values is what it defines both of these. Now this could be moral values, organizational values, conduct values, etiquette values. It implies that some behaviors or outcomes are preferred over the others. Classifying values in a value survey, it could be the terminal values, that means the end values that we are referring to. Instrumental values are the process value. Now, value could be the end value, the goal value, or the process values. People in same occupations or categories tend to hold similar values. For example, if people are working on a shop floor for a manufacturing unit, the common value for them, which will be very commonly seen, would be quality. Quality would be a high value. A process could be a high value. Following procedures would be a high value. Being efficient would be a high value. So, but values vary within groups as well, where value differences makes it difficult for group to negotiate and sometimes may create conflict as well. Generation values as well may differ. For example, if you want to define cohort of the same category, if you want to define the era, if you say 50s, 60s, 60s to 80s, 2 decades, 80s to 2000, and 2000 to present, the coming last 2 decades. Approximation age, if you say dominant work values for the veterans, for the early 50s, 60s, the dominant work values were hardworking, conservative, loyalty to organization. When you came in the 60s or the 80s era, success, achievement, ambition, dislike. If you go in 2000, work-life balance, that's where the work-life balance concept came across. Loyalty to relationships, team orientation, dislike of rules. Current era, confident, financial success and freedom, self-reliant but team orientation, loyalty to both self and the relationship is how the values have changed through generations as well. Now, linking personality and values to the workplace, if you want to figure it out, if you say managers are less interested in someone's ability to do a specific job than in that of a person's flexibility. So a person job fit, they say there are various job types and job fits. The key points are, in today's world, they say a person not only need to be job fit, but he need to be flexible enough as well. Flexibility to learn something new, flexibility to adjust to different kind of people and situations. This is where this model throws highlight on. Now, the Holland's personality type checking on values are 6 types. Those are realistic, investigative, artistic, social, enterprising, and conventional. Need to match personality type with occupation as well. Now, still linking personality with the workplace if you want to figure out. In addition to matching the individual personality to job, managers are also concerned with person organizational fit. That means whether the person is actually fit in a in the current company's culture or the company's values. So sometimes it happens that the individual values might be different with the organizational values. For example, an organization might be very aggressive. Maybe they are a selling organization, and the function of an organization is suppose a person joins in a sales team, and in sales as a value, they need to be very assertive and sometimes aggressive as well. And if a passive kind of individual as a personality or a value type gets into that function, there might be a conflict or a dissonance or a cognitive dissonance where the personalities are not matching, the styles are not matching, the values are not matching, and hence he might not able to deliver results. So this fit need to be looked upon. The global implication, if you need to figure out, if you see personality, do frameworks like Big Five transfer across cultures? Yes. But the frequency on type of the culture may vary. Better in individualistic than collectivistic culture. If you look at the values, they differ across all cultures because we can't say that this value exists across cultures. Different cultures also have different values. If you see Hofstede's framework for assessing culture, the 5 dimensions about it are: 1. The power distance, the individualism to collectivism, the masculinity versus the femininity, the uncertainty versus avoidance, and the long-term versus the short-term orientation. And that's what we will try to figure out individually as well. Now, one we will check out is the power distance. So when we are looking at power distance, what is the power distance? Now, the power distance is the extent to which a society accepts that power in institutions and organizations is distributed unequally. That means low distance and high distance means the distance between haves and have-nots, between people who are high designation and lower designation. In different organizations, this power distance is very high or very low. So that's also a part of the value chain. 2. Individualism versus collectivism. Now, here the degree to which people prefer to act as individual rather than as members of group. Now, some people work very well in silos and the other very well in collectivism. So, what's that type? 3. The masculinity versus femininity means the value of work where people give more importance to men or more men driven, or the other where it is feminine, where the extent where there is a little differentiation between both men or women. Or the uncertainty avoidance. Now friends, it's so very important to understand that we are living in a times of ambiguity. That means uncertainty. Businesses that used to happen 40-50 years back were to a great extent defined or certain to flow in a certain way. But as times have passed by, these situations also change. Here ambiguity has also crept in. There is a high uncertainty. If the value proportion is to avoid high uncertainty, then anxiety might creep in very fast. Society does not mind ambiguous situation, embrace them. Low uncertainty avoidance. So being flexible enough and open enough to take up uncertainty is the key value proposition. Time orientation means how do we take up in short-term and long-term orientation. A national culture attribute that emphasizes that future thrift and persistence. If you see the time that we are living in, a lot of companies and cultures focus on being short-term. Yet you need to figure out ways where we can have long-term implications about it. So Hotspeed's framework on assessment on value chain is that there are regional differences within countries as well. The original data is old and based only on one company. Hotspeed has to make many judgment calls while doing this research. And despite this problem, it remains a very popular framework as well to use the value chain. The GLOBE framework for assessing cultures, it says that the GLOBE or the Global Leadership and Organizational Behavior Effectiveness Research Program, there are 9 dimensions of national culture. And similar to Hotspeed's framework with these additional dimensions, there are human orientation, there is performance orientation, and there are others as well. Now, what we are trying to figure out from the value chain and the personality is, from the personality we need to figure out, screen for the big 5 triad of consciousness, take into account situational factors, as well as with MBTI can be of great help while with training and development. Whereas with values, it often explains attitudes, behaviors, and perceptions. And high performance and satisfaction achieved within individual values match with that of organization. So with values, what we do, we try to match the individual values to organizational values, wherein a lot of synergy is tried to figure out. Great. In the third part of our current session, which will spend down 20-25 minutes or so, would be on perception and individual decision making. Perception. What are perceptions? Perceptions are the process by which an individual organize and interpret their sensory impression in order to give meaning to their environment. That means that perception is based on what we think and align ourselves. Now we need to understand perceptions can be right, could not be right as well. Now, generally we tend to perceive based on our sensory channels of what we see, hear, smell, think, feel. Now, people's behavior is based on the perception of what reality is and not on reality itself. So, a lot of time, people tend to think in a certain way based on the belief system. Now, perceptions are beliefs in a certain way. Now, the world, as it is perceived, the world is behaviorally important. Now, since in any organization at an individual level as well, people look through the world in a particular way based on the perceptions, based on the beliefs that people have. And we will look into how those perceptions are important to deal with. So, one, we look into an attribution theory. They say that perception, making judgments about others. A lot of time, when we meet people as well, we already have an impression about the individual. We call it already always. We always think, okay, this person is always this way. Let me tell you, it need not necessarily be. We all change because we are dynamic by nature. They say that if you're meeting people around, always press the F5 button. And what is an F5 button? F5 button is refresh, because not only the people change, we all are changing. So attribution theory is when individuals observe behavior, they attempt to determine whether it is internally or externally caused. Distinctiveness shows different behaviors in different situations. That means people behave in a different way in different situations based on the impression that are casted off. Errors and bias in attributions, those are fundamental attribution errors. These are the tendency to underestimate the influence of external factors and overestimate the influence of internal factors while making judgments about behavior of others. So when we are dealing with behavior, since when you are working under one roof, because organization is working under one roof, people tend to overestimate internal factors. That means they kind of look into a lot of judgments, preconceived notion about people as well. So errors and bias and attributions are self-servicing biases. Self-servicing biases are the tendency for individuals to attribute their own successes to internal factors while putting the blame on failures of external conditions. For example, if people ask, okay, why didn't you perform? So if this is a question asked, or why didn't you deliver results? The normal things are, oh come on, the market is sluggish. In fact, my team didn't perform well. I already have one member who has not contributed enough. Things like that. And if you people ask, okay, tell me what factors contributed to your success? People generally tell about hard work, determination, commitment, so on and so forth. So people there focus internally as well. That's an important point to understand. The selectivity perception. That means some people are very selective about things. That means people selectively interpret what they see on the basis of their interest, background, experience, and attitude. So based on the experience that they have run through, people have their own preferences about it. And this is so very important to understand while dealing with people. Classical few biases that people are aware, we need to be aware of is one, the frequently used shortcuts in judging others. One is the halo effect. Halo effect. Now what is an halo effect? It is drawing a general impression about an individual on the basis of a single characteristic. So when we deal with people, if suppose one person is good in one of the attribute or one of the characteristic, or say for example one of the job function, what normally people do it, we take that attribute and color the entire personality. Suppose the person, we infer that the person is good in this function, or say for example, let's take an example. If a person has good communication skills, and suppose if he really is very good at it, we take that good element of communication skill and apply to all characteristics about the individual or personality, and then we come to a judgment that is very good as a personality. We can't do that. And exactly the opposite of it, of halo effect, is the horn effect, where one negative attribute shades and mask off the entire personality. That means if some person is negative, has some shortcomings or something which is not good at, we just identify it, enlarge it, and kind of color the entire personality and look through colored lenses. That means the personality in itself is not good. So the halo and the horn effect. The contrast effect. That means the evaluation of person characteristics that are affected by comparisons with other people recently encountered who rank higher or lower on the same character. This also can be taken up with the recency effect. Suppose if we have just met an individual, good or bad, whatever, and then we are meeting somebody else, we immediately make a comparison about behavior. So if the person whom you met earlier was very good, and then we immediately contrast, he is not very good as him is. So we have a barrier of perception, and while dealing with people, this might not be a helpful strategy, and that's the point. Great. It could be or the projection. Now what is projection? It is attributing one's own characteristics to other people. projection is, they say that whatever you are, you tend to look at the world as well. So, whatever the world you are looking or seeing is also a reflection of what you are. I hope you're getting this. I will clarify my point. What I'm saying is, whatever you think is also what you see. That means whatever you're seeing is also a reflection of what you're thinking. That's called a projection. So it's so very important to see. They say that we have 5 senses. Yes or no? We have 5 senses. And John Miller, a famous psychologist, says that with our 5 senses, we can only take in our conscious mind 7 plus or minus 2 bits of information. That is 5 to 9 bits of information only is we can look into through our primary channels or sensory channels. But there are so many other information that we can't really are aware of. So these 5 to 9 bits of information that we are taking in or where our attention is going, these things are based on our own priorities, our own preferences, our own choices, our own intentions. Based on that, we are seeing the world. So these are projections, classical projections. Or the other could be stereotyping. So what is stereotyping? It's judging someone on the basis of one's perception of the group to which that person belongs. So it could be about state orientation, it could be religious orientation, it could be national orientation. Like, okay, he's coming from that state. So, oh, he's coming from Punjab. So that means that he needs to be bold, that means he needs to be brave. He's coming from Calcutta. He needs to be artistic, he needs to be cognitive. He's coming from Chennai, he needs to be good in mathematics. A group perception, which might not be true. Biases, isn't it? Great. Specific application of this is what we'll figure out. The prime application, one-time application is employment interviews. So perceptual biases of raters affect the accuracy of interviews' judgment of application. The performance expectation, self-fulfilling prophecy or Pygmalion effect as it call it. That means the lower or higher performance of employees reflect preconceived leader expectation from employee capability. That means based on whatever his expectation, his means the interviewer's expectation are, he matches that with the employee, which might not be true. The interviewer need to match with the job description to the person. That's the fair evaluation. Or it could be ethnic profiling as well, where a form of stereotyping in which a group of individual is singled out, typically on the basis of race or ethnicity, for intensive inquiry, scrutinizing, or investigation as well. Great. Specific other application, performance evaluation as well. So when we sit down for appraisal, this becomes important. Where appraisals are often the subjective, it's judgmental perception of appraiser for another employee's job performance, or it could be for employee effort as well. Now what's employee effort? Where assessment of individual effort is a subjective judgment to perceptual distortions and less as well. Great. The link between perception and individual decision making. Now we will try to connect how perceptions and the various perceptions that we looked into, how are they going to influence decision making. Now if you see, a problem is the perceived discrepancy between the current state of affairs and the desired state. That means if you see, the problem is we are not looking the problem as it is, or we are not looking at the world as it is. We look at the world as what we are. That's the bias or prejudice that we have. The decision with the problem connection is the choices from among alternatives developed from data perceived as relevant. So we have on one end the problem, on second end we have the decisions to be made, and there are perceptions of decision maker. On one side we have a problem, the other we have a decision to be made based on the choice available, and there is also perceptions. And with this interface or the overlap between these two, we have outcomes involved as well. So if you see the assumptions of rational decision making model, the rational decision making model describes how individuals should behave in order to maximize some outcome. Now, rationalization, students, when we speak about, it's about how to be more logical in your approach, how to make decisions based on data, based on the kind of frameworks that you have as numbers. Like for example, a lot of CEOs mention that we make decisions based on logic and facts. So not only based on emotions. So that's about the rational approach about going about it. So, and the model assumptions in the rational approach are problem clarify. So we clarify what the problem is. We know what are the, based on this problem, what are the choices available. We look into clear preferences. What preferences do we have? We have constant preferences as well, and no time or cost constraints. So we look into these options and the maximum payoff. If we look into, if we make this choice, how do we optimize the results? How do we maximize our results so we get an optimum outputs as well? Then there are creativity as an aspect coming in, wherein it is the ability to produce novel and useful ideas. In the current business context, one of the tools that are used in decision making is the creative concept. Now, three elements of creativity, where proposition that individual creativity requires expertise, creative thinking skills, and intrinsic task orientation. So in creativity, we always ask the question, okay, what else? If we have a current problem at hand, we always define how I can solve this problem more creatively. What options do I have at my disposal that might have never thought before? What is it that I'm going to do that I've never thought before or done before? Or one of the ways to approach this. And we also look at how are decisions actually made in organizations. They are bounded by rationality. That means we say that individuals make decisions by constructing simplified models that extract the essential features from problem without capturing all the complexities. Let me tell you that students, any context, the problems are not very open. That means we have to figure out what are the relevant things we are going to pick up and then act accordingly. We also need to find out how are the decisions actually made. One, the identification. The first step is identification. That means visibility over importance of problem. We need to identify what the problem is. Where is attention catching, high profile problems. It is so very important that they say that leaders, great leaders, are master sniffers. They sense their environment very fast. They are very much attention to details about it. Then desire to solve the problem. Once you identify the problem, The second is the desire to solve the problem, that is self-interest. If a problem concerns decision maker, that means if the problem is within his influence, how I am going to solve the problem, the desire to it. Then the alternative development, that is satisfying, that is seeking the first alternative that solves the problem. If I have a problem at hand, second is if I have a desire to solve the problem, what alternatives do I have? Engaging in incremental rather than unique problem solving through successive limited comparison of alternatives. Now, if a problem I have come, I will look into what options do I have. Then I will look into how to solve the problem based on time availability, based on resource availability as well. The next step involved in it becomes common biases and errors in decision making is also what we are going to look in, and those are overconfidence bias. That means believing too much in our own decision competencies. Sometimes if you have got good results from a past experience of decision making, people are just overconfident about it. That means they don't look into other people's opinion as well, which might be important at certain context. Or anchoring bias, while fixating on early preconceived information. That means once you have an initial data coming in, people just make up mind, okay, I'm going to do this. Now this awareness about oneself is so very important in decision making. Or confirmation biases, that means using only the facts that support our decision. That means we have already made a decision and then we are gathering resources. How are we going to support it as well? The availability bias, that means using information that is most readily at hand. Sometimes we just gather information that is available only as well. We need to find out information from other resources as well to figure out what fits in. The representation bias here, assessing the likelihood of an occurrence by trying to match it with pre-existing category. So if we have something coming up or cropping up, we need to figure out what is it that matches with other things as well, which are relevant and important to that particular kind of problem. Common biases and errors also are escalation of commitment. Now, increasing commitment to a previous decision is in spite of negative confirmation. Suppose if you have committed earlier, then to change our decision, people don't prefer because they feel that I've already made a decision. Then to change becomes difficult. So, prior commitment. Randomness error. Now, what is this randomness error? Now, trying to create meaning out of random events by falling prey to a false sense of control or superstition. Sometimes we just change our decision based on some other assumptions or beliefs that we have, which might not be really good from the kind of context that we are dealing with. Or it could be hindsight bias as well. Hindsight is the background bias, which we are not aware. Sometimes they play in the background. They are falsely believing to have accurately predicted the outcome of an event after that outcome is actually known. So we tend to get to know this. We have somewhere in the background that it might not be a good decision, but we kind of overlook that background thinking, and we need to be aware of it as well. Great. Intuition. Now, intuition has to be really looked into, neither overlooked or underlooked as well. Now, intuitive decision making is an unconscious process created out of distilled experience. Now, conditions favoring where we should favor intuitive decision making are: number one, where a high level of uncertainty exists. When we don't know, we don't have much data about it. So in this case, intuitive decision making could be the something that you can fall back upon. There is a little precedent to draw on. We don't have much of available facts about it. Variables are less scientifically predictable. That means we don't have a fair logic going. Facts are limited. The data available is limited. Facts don't clearly point to the way. That means although sometimes it happens that we do have facts, but they don't really substantiate it to a particular point. We don't have enough evidence about going about through, or facts don't clearly point. Facts don't clearly point the way, or analytical data are of little use, or where severe possible alternative solution exists, or time is limited, and it's time to press for the right decision also could be the factors where you need to favor intuitive decision as well. Great. Organizational constraints on decision makers. Now there are certain constraints that also exist from a decision maker perspective as well. Those are times during performance evaluation, where evaluation criteria influence the choice of action. It could be the reward system, where decision makers make action choices that are favored by the organization as well. It could be the formal regulation as well, wherein the organization rules and policies limit the alternative choice of decision makers. Or it could be the system imposed time constraints, where the system itself does not really give much time. Or the historical precedents as well, where past decision influence current decision. So these are also few things that influences people as well. Cultural differences as well influence. Those are problem selected. It could be based on time orientation. It could be how much importance to give to logic or rationality. It could be the belief in the ability of people to solve problems. Sometimes decision making is a shared decision making. You are not a single decision maker. It's a kind of panel where multiple people decide. So how much of that is involved? Preference for collective decision making as well. So it depends on cultural decision making styles as well, based on which the decision making is taken about as well. The ethical decision criteria, wherein the utilitarian method, that means seeking the greatest good for the greatest number. That means if majority of people are going to benefit about it, the thumb rule becomes take the right decision. Respecting and protecting basic rights of individuals, such as whistleblowers as well. So we don't have somebody who can take advantage of decisions as well. Or justice as well, where imposing and enforcing rules fairly or impartially as well. Now it could be based on also on national culture, where there are no global ethical standards. For example, rules for internet. Now there are no national boundaries on internet, so that's something that goes beyond boundaries as well. Now the ethical principles of good organizations that reflect and respect local cultural norms are necessary for high standards and consistent practices as well. And